You are not weak because of your circumstances. You are weak because of how you speak to yourself every single day. No one ever taught you this, and that is exactly why you are still stuck where you are. You think your problem is money, opportunities, relationships, or luck. But the truth is far simpler and far more uncomfortable. You are sabotaging yourself with the voice inside your own head. That voice never stops. It is there the moment you wake up. It is there when you make a mistake. It is there when you get ignored, rejected, or misunderstood. And instead of building you, it slowly tears you down. It replays your past failures. It exaggerates your fears. It makes you doubt yourself even when you are doing better than you think. You don't realize it, but every time you tell yourself, I'm not good enough, I can't do this, or I always mess things up, you are not just thinking, you are programming. And that program is running all day, every day. It shapes how you act. It controls how you react. It determines how others perceive you. And eventually, it dictates the results you get from life. The cost of this is not small. You live below your potential. You react instead of respond. You lose your calm, your self-respect, and your inner authority piece by piece. And the most dangerous part is this. Most people never even notice they are doing it to themselves. The problem is not just what you say to yourself. The real problem is what that voice is slowly turning you into. Most people still believe this is just about thinking negative thoughts. They treat it like a small habit, something surface level, something harmless. It is not. This is not about thoughts. This is about identity. Because the way you speak to yourself is not just shaping your mood, it is shaping your standards, your behavior, your posture in the world, and ultimately, the kind of man or woman you become. There are two types of people moving through life right now. The first reacts to everything. They wake up and immediately check their phone. They see a message and their mood shifts. They get ignored and their confidence drops. They face a small obstacle and their inner voice starts whispering doubt. Their state is constantly being pulled by the outside world. They are reactive. And because they are reactive, they never build real inner authority. The second type is different. They are not controlled by what happens. They are controlled by how they interpret what happens. They still face stress, rejection, uncertainty, but internally they are not collapsing. They are observing. They are choosing. They are directing. This is the difference between someone who lives unconsciously and someone who lives with discipline. And this difference starts in one place, the conversation inside their own mind. Most people don't lose because they lack ability, they lose because they lack self-respect. And self-respect is not built by external validation. It is built by how you treat yourself when no one is watching. When you fail, do you attack yourself or do you correct yourself? When you are challenged, do you shrink or do you stabilize? When things don't go your way, do you spiral or do you stay grounded? These moments seem small, but they reveal everything. Because every time you tolerate weak self-talk, you are lowering your standards. Every time you let your mind run unchecked, you are giving away control. And once control is gone, everything else follows. Your emotions become unstable. Your actions become inconsistent. Your results become unpredictable. You start needing validation from others because you cannot generate stability within yourself. And this is where most people get trapped. They start performing instead of living. They speak to impress. They act to be approved. They react because they cannot hold their own internal state. And deep down, they know it. That quiet discomfort you feel sometimes, that subtle sense that you are not fully in control, that is not random, that is the result of years of unmanaged internal dialogue shaping a weaker version of you. You may look fine on the outside, you may still function, still move forward, still achieve things, but internally there is noise, there is tension, there is instability. And that instability leaks into everything, your decisions, your relationships, your presence. Because real power is not loud. Real power is the ability to remain composed when everything around you is trying to pull you out of position. Real power is emotional discipline. It is being able to pause instead of react, to observe instead of collapse, to choose instead of drift. And none of that is possible if your inner voice is working against you. Because if you cannot trust the way you speak to yourself, you cannot trust the way you move through life. This is why this problem is not small. It is not just a mindset issue, it is a structural issue. It is the foundation of your identity. And if that foundation is unstable, everything you build on top of it will eventually crack. From this point forward, we are not just talking about thoughts anymore. We are going deeper into the patterns that built this voice, the hidden mechanisms that keep it running, and how to take back control at the level where most people never even look. Your inner voice is not just describing your life, it is directing it. Most people completely misunderstand this. They think their thoughts are reactions to reality. They believe something happens first, and then they respond internally. But that is not how it works. The truth is far more uncomfortable. Your thoughts are not reacting to your life. Your thoughts are preparing you for a version of it. And most people are constantly preparing for the wrong one. You wake up, you check your phone, and before your feet even touch the ground, the voice begins. I'm tired. I don't feel like doing this. Today is going to be stressful. It sounds harmless. It sounds normal. But what you are actually doing is rehearsing weakness before the day has even started. Then something small happens. A message gets ignored, a plan changes, and instantly the voice builds on the script it already started. See? Nothing ever goes right. People don't respect me. I knew this would happen. This is how most people live, not consciously choosing their state, but unconsciously confirming their fears. And over time, this repetition becomes identity. Because the brain does not care if something is true. It cares if something is repeated. What you repeat, you reinforce. What you reinforce, you become. This is why two people can face the exact same situation and walk away with completely different outcomes. One interprets the situation as proof of limitation. The other interprets it as a moment to adjust and move forward. The difference is not intelligence, it is not talent, it is interpretation. And interpretation is controlled by inner dialogue. Most people lose at this level without even realizing it. They think their problem is discipline. They think they need more motivation. They think they need better strategies. But none of that matters if the voice in your head is constantly working against you, because you cannot outperform a mind that is programmed for failure. You will sabotage your own effort. You will hesitate when you should act. You will overthink when you should move. You will doubt when you should decide. And then you will call it bad luck. Here is the part most people don't want to accept. That voice in your head is not neutral. It has been trained. It was shaped by years of repetition, environment, experiences, and unchecked patterns. Maybe it came from criticism when you were younger. Maybe it came from comparing yourself to others. Maybe it came from a few failures that you never fully processed. But regardless of where it came from, it is now running your life in the background, quietly, consistently, relentlessly, and if you never question it, it becomes your default reality. You start believing it, you start acting in alignment with it, you start building a life that matches it. This is why awareness is not optional. It is the first level of control, because you cannot change what you do not see. Most people go through entire days without noticing a single thought. They are fused with their mind. Every thought feels like truth. Every emotion feels justified. Every reaction feels automatic. But the moment you step back and observe, something changes. You create distance. And in that distance, you create power. Because now, instead of being pulled by every thought, you can start questioning them. You can catch the pattern. You can interrupt the loop. Imagine this. You are sitting alone. Your phone lights up. No message from the person you were expecting. Instantly, the voice starts. They don't care. You're being ignored. You're not important. That reaction feels immediate. It feels real. But if you pause just for a second and observe, you will see it clearly. That is not reality. That is interpretation. And interpretation can be changed. This is the first shift. You stop identifying with every thought that appears. You stop treating your mind like an unquestionable authority. You begin to see it for what it is. A system that has been conditioned, not a source of absolute truth. And once you see that, you are no longer trapped inside it. You are above it. This is where control begins. Not when you force positive thinking, not when you try to silence your mind, but when you learn to observe it without immediately obeying it. Because the moment you stop blindly following your thoughts, you stop blindly following the version of yourself those thoughts have been creating. And that is the first real step toward becoming someone different. Not by changing your actions first, but by changing the voice that decides those actions in the first place. The real problem is not that you think negatively. The real problem is why you need to think that way in the first place. Most people believe their reactions are caused by external events. They think they feel anxious because something uncertain happened. They think they feel insecure because someone ignored them. They think they feel angry because someone disrespected them. But that is not the root. Those are just triggers. The real cause is deeper. It is the hidden need underneath the reaction, the need to be validated, the need to be understood, the need to feel in control, the need to feel like you are enough. And when those needs are fragile, your mind compensates. It starts talking. It starts explaining. It starts reacting. Not because the situation is serious, but because your identity feels threatened. This is why two people can face the same situation and respond completely differently. One gets ignored and moves on. The other gets ignored and spirals. One faces criticism and adjusts. The other faces criticism and becomes defensive. The difference is not the situation. The difference is how much they depend on it. When your inner state depends on external feedback, you are no longer in control. You are negotiating your value with the world, moment by moment. And the mind reflects that instability. It becomes reactive. It becomes loud. It becomes desperate to interpret everything in a way that protects your sense of self. You see this everywhere. Someone sends a message and doesn't get a reply. Instead of staying neutral, the mind starts constructing meaning. Did I say something wrong? Why are they ignoring me? Maybe I'm not important. The situation is simple. The reaction is not. Because the reaction is not about the message. It is about what that message represents. It touches something deeper. A fear of being overlooked, a fear of not mattering, a fear of losing control over how you are perceived. And so the mind reacts to protect that identity, not with clarity, but with noise. This is where most people lose their power, not in big moments, but in small, repeated reactions like this. They keep handing over control of their internal state to things they cannot control. Other people's opinions, other people's timing, other people's behavior. And every time they do that, they weaken their own center. Because control is not something you claim once, it is something you either maintain or lose in every moment. The Stoic understands this clearly. What disturbs you is not what happens. It is your judgment about what happens. But most people never question that judgment. They assume it is truth. They assume their reaction is justified. They assume their feelings are accurate reflections of reality. And because of that, they remain trapped. Not by the world, but by their interpretation of it. This is why your inner dialogue matters more than the event itself, because the event is neutral until your mind assigns meaning to it. And once that meaning is assigned, your entire state follows. Your emotions shift. Your behavior changes. Your presence weakens or strengthens. And all of that happens in seconds, without awareness, without control, without choice. This is the deeper layer. You are not just reacting to life, you are reacting to what life means about you. And if your sense of self is unstable, everything will feel personal, everything will feel threatening, everything will demand a reaction. But when your identity is grounded, something different happens. You stop taking everything personally. You stop needing constant confirmation. You stop interpreting neutral events as negative signals about your worth. And when that happens, your mind becomes quieter. Not because life is easier, but because you are no longer depending on it to define you. This is where real strength begins. Not in controlling the outside world, but in removing your dependence on it. Because the moment you stop needing the world to validate you, the world loses its power to disturb you. And when that power is gone, your inner voice no longer needs to defend, explain, or react to everything. It becomes calm, it becomes precise, it becomes intentional. Not because you forced it, but because there is nothing left inside you that needs to be protected at every moment. The root of your behavior is not your habits. It is your identity. Most people try to fix their actions without ever questioning the version of themselves that is producing those actions. They try to be more disciplined, more confident, more focused, but underneath all of that effort, the same self-image remains. And that is why nothing truly changes. Because behavior does not create identity. Identity creates behavior. You don't act confident because you trained yourself to act that way. You act confident because at some level you believe you are someone who can handle what is in front of you. And if that belief is not there, no amount of surface level effort will hold for long. This is why people keep repeating the same patterns. They say they want to change, but their internal dialogue keeps reinforcing the same identity. I'm not consistent. I always procrastinate. I'm bad at this. These statements seem small, but they are not descriptions. They are declarations. And every time you repeat them, you are reinforcing a version of yourself that will continue to act in alignment with them. This is the trap. You think you are being honest with yourself, but in reality, you are conditioning yourself. You are lowering your own standard through repetition. And once that standard drops, your behavior follows. Because you will always act in a way that is consistent with who you believe you are. Not who you wish you were. Not who you say you want to become. But who you have accepted yourself to be. This is why reactions reveal everything. The way you respond under pressure is not random. It is a direct reflection of your identity. When something challenges you, do you stay composed or do you collapse? When things don't go your way, do you adapt or do you complain? When you are ignored, do you remain grounded or do you seek attention? These reactions are not caused by the situation. They are exposed by it. Because pressure does not create your character. It reveals it. And if your identity is built on external validation, your reactions will always depend on external conditions. You will feel strong when things go well and unstable when they don't. You will feel confident when you are praised and uncertain when you are questioned. You will feel in control only when everything aligns with your expectations. That is not strength. That is dependence. And most people live in that state without realizing it. They think they are improving because they are trying harder. But effort without identity shift is just temporary resistance. Eventually, you fall back. Not because you lack discipline, but because your internal standard has not changed. This is where real transformation begins. Not when you force new behaviors, but when you raise your internal standard of who you are. You stop saying, I need to be more disciplined, and start saying, I am someone who does what needs to be done. You stop saying, I hope I stay calm, and start saying, I am someone who remains composed under pressure. This is not delusion, this is direction, because the mind organizes your actions around the identity you consistently reinforce. And once that identity becomes stable, your behavior follows naturally. You don't have to fight yourself at every step. You don't have to constantly motivate yourself. You move in alignment with who you believe you are. This is what most people never understand. They are trying to control their actions while ignoring the system that generates those actions. They are trying to win externally while losing internally. And that never works long term, because your life will always reflect your internal standard, not your goals, not your intentions, your standard. What you tolerate, what you accept, what you allow from yourself and from others. That is your real identity, and your results are simply a mirror of it. If you tolerate inconsistency, you will get inconsistent results. If you tolerate weak self-talk, you will get weak actions. If you tolerate emotional instability, you will get unstable outcomes. But the moment your standard rises, everything changes, not instantly, but inevitably, because you start rejecting what no longer aligns. You stop negotiating with your lower habits. You stop accepting behaviors that contradict who you are becoming, and that is where real power is built, quietly, consistently, without needing to prove anything. Because identity is not something you announce, it is something you demonstrate every day, in every decision, in every reaction, in every moment where you either stay aligned or fall back into who you used to be. Real strength is not what you say, it is how you move. Most people talk about discipline, control, and self-mastery, but when you watch how they actually live, the truth becomes obvious. They are reactive. They are easily pulled. They are constantly negotiating their state with the outside world. A notification appears, and they reach for it immediately. A message arrives, and they feel the need to respond instantly. A moment of silence appears, and they rush to fill it. This is not control. This is dependency disguised as activity. The Stoic does not move like this. The Stoic is not rushed by impulses. The Stoic is not dragged by emotions. The Stoic is not controlled by the urgency of the moment. There is space between stimulus and response. And in that space, there is authority. Imagine this. Your phone lights up. Most people reach for it without thinking, not because it is important, but because they are conditioned, because their attention is not fully theirs. But someone with inner discipline pauses, not dramatically, not to prove anything, just naturally. They decide when to engage, not the notification. This is what control looks like in real life. It is subtle, it is quiet, but it is unmistakable. Or consider a conversation. Someone challenges you, questions you, maybe even disrespects you slightly. Most people react instantly. They interrupt, they defend, they raise their tone, not because the situation demands it, but because their ego cannot tolerate the discomfort. But a grounded person does something different. They listen, they stay composed, they do not rush to prove, they do not rush to win. They respond when they choose to, not when they are triggered to. And that response carries weight because it is not driven by emotion. It is directed by control. This is why silence is powerful. Not because silence itself is strength, but because controlled silence reveals strength. Anyone can talk. Anyone can react. Anyone can fill space with noise. But not everyone can hold still when their mind is pushing them to act. Not everyone can sit with discomfort without trying to escape it. That is where restraint becomes visible. You see it in small moments. Someone who does not need to check their phone every few minutes. Someone who does not need to explain themselves constantly. Someone who can walk away from a situation without needing the last word. Someone who can wait without becoming anxious. These behaviors seem simple, but they are not easy, because they require internal stability. They require a mind that is not constantly seeking stimulation, validation, or control. They require a level of discipline that most people never develop. And this is where embodiment matters, because it is not enough to understand these ideas. You have to live them. You have to practice them in real situations, not just think about them in calm moments. When you feel the urge to react, you pause. When you feel the need to explain yourself, you ask if it is necessary. When you feel pulled to check something, you delay, not to suppress yourself, but to train yourself. Because every time you resist an unnecessary reaction, you strengthen your control, and every time you give in without awareness, you weaken it. This is how discipline is built. Not in extreme moments, but in ordinary ones. In the quiet decisions no one sees. In the way you carry yourself when nothing is forcing you to. This is also why energy matters. Your attention is not free. Your focus is not unlimited. Every time you react impulsively, you spend energy. Every time you engage in unnecessary noise, you drain yourself. And over time, this creates fatigue. Not physical, but mental. You become scattered, you become restless, you lose clarity. But when you are selective with your responses, something changes. Your energy becomes concentrated. Your actions become intentional. Your presence becomes stronger. People feel it even if they cannot explain it. Because in a world where most people are constantly reacting, someone who is composed stands out immediately. They do not chase. They do not rush. They do not overextend. They move with control. And that control creates a different kind of confidence. Not loud, not performative, but grounded, stable, unshaken. This is the difference between someone who is trying to appear strong and someone who actually is. One is constantly proving, the other is simply being. And you can see it in everything they do, in how they speak, in how they wait, in how they walk away, in how they handle pressure. Because strength is not built in theory, it is built in behavior. And behavior is revealed in the smallest moments, long before it is tested in the biggest ones. At some point, this stops being about fixing your thoughts. It becomes about how you choose to live your life. Most people stay trapped in the same loop because they are focused on short-term relief instead of long-term alignment. They want to feel better right now. They want the anxiety to go away, the discomfort to disappear, the uncertainty to resolve itself immediately. And because of that, they keep choosing what is easy over what is right. They react instead of reflect. They escape instead of endure. They seek validation instead of building self-respect. And slowly, without realizing it, they trade their long-term strength for short-term comfort. This is the pattern that weakens people over time. Not dramatic failure, but small, daily compromises. You say something just to be liked. You respond just to avoid tension. You explain yourself just to be understood. You check your phone just to feel connected. None of these seem significant in isolation, but together they shape your direction. Because every time you choose comfort over clarity, you reinforce a version of yourself that cannot hold pressure. And life will always apply pressure. Not to punish you, but to reveal you. Time exposes everything. It exposes your habits, your standards, your discipline, your identity. You can pretend for a while, you can perform for a while, but eventually your patterns become visible in your results, in your relationships, in your state of mind. This is why Stoicism is not about temporary control. It is about long-term alignment. It is about choosing who you are becoming, even when no one is watching, even when nothing is forcing you to. It is about building a version of yourself that does not collapse under time, pressure, or uncertainty. And that requires a different way of thinking. You stop asking what feels good right now and start asking what aligns with who I am becoming. You stop chasing immediate relief and start building long-term stability. You stop reacting to every moment and start selecting your responses based on your standards, not your emotions. This is where detachment begins. Not detachment from life, but detachment from the need to control everything in it. You stop needing every message to be answered immediately. You stop needing every situation to go your way. You stop needing people to understand you perfectly. And when that need disappears, something powerful replaces it. Peace. Not passive peace, not avoidance, but grounded, stable, unshaken peace. The kind that comes from knowing you are not dependent on external conditions to feel centered. This is what most people are actually searching for, even if they don't realize it. Not success in the way they define it, but stability. The ability to move through life without constantly being thrown off balance. The ability to face uncertainty without losing yourself. The ability to experience pressure without collapsing under it. And that is not built through motivation, it is built through alignment. Through consistently choosing actions, thoughts, and behaviors that reflect a higher standard of self. Over time, this creates something deeper than confidence. It creates trust, not trust in the world, but trust in yourself. You trust that no matter what happens, you will handle it. You trust that your state is not easily shaken. You trust that your value is not determined by temporary outcomes. And when that trust is there, everything changes. You move differently, you decide differently, you interact differently. You stop chasing, you stop forcing, you stop overthinking every outcome because you are no longer trying to control life. You are grounded enough to move with it. This is where real maturity begins. When you realize that not everything needs a reaction, not everything needs your attention, not everything deserves your energy. And once you understand that, your world becomes quieter. Not because life is silent, but because you are no longer responding to every noise. And in that quiet, you become stronger, clearer, more focused, more intentional. You begin to see time differently. You stop thinking in moments and start thinking in trajectories. You understand that who you are becoming matters more than how you feel today, that your standards matter more than your impulses, that your long-term self-respect matters more than short-term approval. And when you truly internalize that, you stop living reactively. You start living deliberately, not perfectly. Not without mistakes, but with direction, with awareness, with control. And that is what separates those who drift through life from those who shape it. One reacts to what happens, the other decides who they are, regardless of what happens. And over time, that difference becomes everything. There is something most people get wrong about control. They think being calm means being strong. They think staying silent means they have mastered themselves. They think detaching means they are no longer affected. But if you look closely, a lot of what people call control is just avoidance in disguise. They are not calm, they are suppressing, they are not silent, they are afraid to speak. They are not detached, they are disconnected. And this is where the difference between real strength and imitation becomes clear. Because real Stoic strength does not come from escaping reality, it comes from facing it without losing yourself. Some people say nothing because they are composed. Others say nothing because they don't trust their voice. Those two look the same from the outside, but internally they are completely different. One is grounded, the other is restrained by fear. Some people walk away from situations because they choose peace. Others walk away because they cannot handle confrontation. Again, it looks similar, but one is a decision, the other is a reaction. This is why you have to be honest with yourself, because your mind is very good at justifying weakness. It will tell you that you are being patient when you are actually avoiding action. It will tell you that you are being calm when you are actually suppressing frustration. It will tell you that you are letting go when you are actually giving up. And if you never question that, you will build a version of yourself that feels controlled on the surface but unstable underneath. This is the hidden danger. You can develop habits that look strong but are built on weak foundations. You can appear disciplined but internally feel tension. You can appear detached but still be affected by everything. And over time, that disconnect grows. Because real control is not about what you don't show, it is about what you don't need to hide. A truly grounded person does not need to suppress reactions constantly because they are not being triggered at the same level. Their identity is not under threat in every situation. Their value is not constantly being negotiated, so their calm is natural, not forced. Their silence is chosen, not imposed. Their detachment is clarity, not distance. This is the deeper level most people never reach because it requires more than behavior change. It requires internal honesty. You have to see where you are still reacting out of fear, where you are still seeking validation, where you are still avoiding discomfort instead of mastering it. And that is uncomfortable because it removes the illusion of progress. It shows you that some of what you thought was strength was just a refined form of weakness. But this realization is not a setback. It is a turning point. Because once you see it clearly, you stop pretending. You stop performing. You stop building an identity around appearances. And you start building something real, something stable, something that does not depend on looking strong, but actually being strong. This is where your inner dialogue becomes even more important. Because now, it is not just about replacing negative thoughts, it is about aligning your thoughts with truth. Not what sounds good, not what feels comfortable, but what is real. If you feel triggered, you admit it. If you feel uncertain, you acknowledge it. If you feel weak in a moment, you recognize it without judgment. Not to stay there, but to move through it honestly. Because denial does not create strength. Awareness does. And from that awareness, you can choose differently. Not to escape discomfort, but to face it with control. Not to silence yourself, but to speak when it matters. Not to detach from everything, but to stay grounded within it. This is real stoicism. Not passive, not numb, not distant, but present, aware, and in control without needing to prove it. At this point, the question is no longer whether this works. The question is whether you are willing to live differently, because everything you have heard comes down to one simple truth. The way you speak to yourself is the way you shape your life, not occasionally, not when you remember, but constantly, in every moment, in every reaction, in every decision you make when no one is watching. Right now, you are standing at a quiet crossroads. Nothing dramatic, nothing visible from the outside, but internally, it matters more than anything. You can continue the way you have been living, letting your thoughts run unchecked, letting your reactions be automatic, letting your identity be shaped by past patterns and external noise. And if you choose that path, nothing will suddenly collapse, life will continue, you will still function, you will still move forward. But you will stay within the same limits, the same cycles, the same version of yourself, just repeated over time. Or you can make a different decision, not a loud one, not something you announce, just a quiet shift. The next time a thought appears, you notice it. The next time you feel the urge to react, you pause. The next time your mind starts pulling you into old patterns, you choose differently. Not perfectly, but deliberately. Because change does not happen when everything is ideal. It happens in small moments of awareness, repeated consistently. This is how a new identity is built. Not through intensity, but through repetition. Not through motivation, but through alignment. Every time you speak to yourself with clarity instead of doubt, you reinforce a different version of yourself. Every time you stay composed instead of reacting, you strengthen your control. Every time you choose your response instead of being pulled into it, you take back authority over your own mind. And over time, something shifts. Not suddenly, but undeniably. The noise becomes quieter. The reactions become slower. The need to prove, to explain, to chase begins to fade. And in its place, something stronger appears. Stability. You stop depending on external conditions to feel centered. You stop needing validation to feel valuable. You stop negotiating your state with every situation that comes your way because you have built something internally that does not move as easily. This is what most people are missing. They are trying to change their life without changing the system that creates it. They are trying to control outcomes while ignoring the source of their actions. But once you understand this, everything becomes simpler. Not easier, but clearer. You stop looking for answers outside. You stop waiting for the right moment. You stop hoping something will change. And you start taking responsibility for the one place where change actually begins. Your mind, your voice, your internal standard. This is where your future is decided. Not in one big moment, but in thousands of small ones. The way you speak to yourself when you fail. The way you think when things don't go your way. The way you respond when you feel pressure. These moments define you. Not the version of you that you present, but the version of you that actually lives your life. So the decision is simple. You either continue reacting or you start choosing. You either let your mind run your life or you take control of it. You either stay the same or you begin becoming someone different. And that shift does not start tomorrow. It does not start next week. It starts with the next thought you allow or refuse to accept.